What was the first territory you worked?
Initially I worked for, I would go out because the way used to, you started as a job guy, you would go just for TVs to try and get your foot in the door.
And you
So
worked the independents, right?
well, yeah, the Outlaws back then. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
I would, and you could keep pretty busy back then on the Outlaws, because, they run pretty much 5-6 days a week. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd go out and work for Muchnick in Missouri and Geigel in Kansas City. And
Mm-hmm.
then Vern up in Minnesota, George Cannon up in Windsor, in
But they weren't
Detroit.
independents. They had
They
regular
had TV
territories,
and
right? So
yeah, they
you
had
were
regular
working regular
territories.
territories then.
Those two, yeah, and then
I
Dick the
say.
Bruiser, Dick the Bruisers in Indiana,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then occasionally down for Paphos in Eastern Kentucky. You know,
So
I'd go down
where
there.
did I meet you the first time? WWF? I mean,
I think we met before that. I just can't remember when it was or where it was, but I'm pretty I remember meeting you before that, and then we met back up in WWF in
tell me
'95.
tell me about your Smoky Mountain days. How did you get
Oh
there?
well,
You ought
I
to say
know Cornette.
you ought to say lucky. I guess I was just lucky.
I actually was. Here's the thing. Okay, at that point in time, I'd started in 1982 and it was 1995, and I had been, not really, nobody really took notice of me or anything. And a large reason why was because I didn't have a personality to sell. I was good in the
Mm-hmm.
ring, but, no, you couldn't describe me. And I, at that time, had trained Dan Severn to be a professional wrestler. And then Dan got a chance in the UFC 4 out in Tulsa.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dan came to me and he's like, he knew how to wrestle, but he didn't know how to necessarily fight. They're two different things. And so I said, when I look back at it now, we had no idea what we were doing, because the UFC was so different, because literally, number one, you didn't know who you were going to fight at all. Number two, you didn't know, like today, the UFC, the MMA has its own style. There's all fighters have a ground game and they have a stand-up game. Well, back in those days, like Dam's a wrestler, he would face a karate guy, or like that
Mm-hmm.
night he had to fight 3 times. The first fight was a Muay Thai fighter. The second fight was a long style karate fighter, and the third was jiu-jitsu, was Hoist Gracie. So there was no way to prepare or specify or train for a specific opponent, because number one, you didn't know who you were going to face, and number
Mm-hmm.
two, you didn't know what type of style they fought when you did it. So we just did our best, and I ended
So
up being.
what was your record in MMA style?
Well, I
You
didn't
didn't have a
fight
record.
no. I went and fought over in
You know what my
Japan
record
for shoot
was?
fights.
In
What's that?
0-0.
It's 0.
Because I put James read me something earlier. Said favorite holes. I said any that don't hurt. That was my favorite holes.
Yeah.
So, but those MMA guys, they got to be just a different mindset.
They're a different breed.
They're nuts.
Definitely. Dan was a different breed too.